Hello, my name is Lakin, this is Bagheera, and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be trying to figure out how exactly to world build. Before I filmed this video, I wanted to have my world built because it just kind of, if I'm going to talk about world building, I should have my world built, But a world is not built in a day. As I've been world building for the first time for my novel, I've learned a lot. But I'm still nowhere near close to being done and nowhere near close to being considered an expert or even an intermediate. I'm still very much a beginner. This video is for all the people like me. All the people who are struggling to world build and realizing they're trying not to get overwhelmed, but yet all this stuff is just coming in and it feels like they have to fill out this whole globe of history and culture and all this stuff when all they have is like an ice cube. This is for you and me. We're in this together. I don't know why I thought I could fully flesh out my world in a week, but I did. And that's not the case. Before I get into all this stuff, and before I get into Brandon Sanderson, which has really helped me with this world building, I want to talk about the thing that has kind of helped me more than Brandon Sanderson, and that is Dungeons and Dragons. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I've always wanted to, but because that involves hanging out with people and that freaks me out, I don't do it. I've watched videos of people playing it, which probably sounds really nerdy of me, but I've been using Dungeons and Dragons to kind of build my characters and also to kind of seeing how dungeon masters, which are like the people who create the worlds for each campaign, I'm seeing how they create worlds and create maps and all this stuff. And so even though Dungeons and Dragons is medieval, like if you're not in a medieval state, but if you have this fantasy, fantastical world, definitely check out Dungeons and Dragons. Their website, like D&D Beyond, you can create your characters on there, which is what I've done. And you can kind of get a grasp of like your characters, which that's more character building than world building, but it still helps flesh out your world if you can kind of see, oh, so I have these types of races and I have these jobs, and in this group, each one of these people play a certain role, and this is kind of how the world functions and stuff like that. And it's just really intriguing. Don't knock it until you try it. Dungeons and Dragons is a great world building and character building tool. It would have never even crossed my mind until I was looking up, I think I was looking up world maps, like fantasy world maps to kind of build my own. Out popped Dungeons and Dragons world maps, which I have created my world maps, and I've only focused in on the places that are really important, which is, so I'll put up beside me, I have my huge world map, which looks like this. Right now it's just called the Known Realms because I don't know what else to call it, but that is what the world is called. And as you can see, there's a big island in the middle. That's where everyone lives. And then there's a triangle island up in the top corner. And that is where the people who lost the big war that is in my story, that's where they kind of were pushed off to and exiled to. And then all the water is where all the mermaids live, and it's just so cool. And then this world is divided into, I think, 7 nations. And the nation that my story focuses in on is Ollery, which is right down here, I have it. That's the only one I have named. Because, you know, doing what you need to do. I'll eventually name everything, but not right now. And then in Ollery, we have all these cities. So I figured out where all the cities are. There are 34, I think. And again, I've only named 2 of them. The main one, Ollery City, and I can't remember what Mowgli, my main character, what his small town is named, but I've also named that one. It'll be up on the screen. But Ollery City looks like this. It has the castle, it has the boarding school that Mowgli will go to, and various things like that. And then Mowgli's small town looks like this. So it has his farm and a couple major spots that he'll go to in the story. As you can see, like, I've also made floor plans for their house, or Mowgli's house, and I still need to make floor plans of the boarding school. But other than that, yeah, this is the amount of world that I've designed to kind of help me see where things are going and how far things are and all this stuff. And that was probably really fun. Not probably, it was really fun. Probably the most fun thing about the world building, instead of just typing things out and thinking of it, is to just actually create something that I can see. Now that I've kind of talked about the things that I've made and like the non-traditional world building stuff, let's go into the more traditional world building stuff that I've kind of learned, and also still my own frustrations with world building. I've been watching a lot of Brandon Sanderson's videos. I've never read Brandon Sanderson, but Walter has, and Walter loves his writing. And he teaches classes sometimes at some university somewhere and puts the classes online. And he has a whole class about world building. And he goes so in depth. And it's just, the way he talks about it is very elementary and very easy for like me to understand. So one of the things he talked about was the iceberg, and how like all novelists talk about how the tip of the iceberg above the water, is how much they see, but like below the iceberg is like all the stuff you've also made that helps give this world more life and stuff. And he talked about how that iceberg is there, but the underneath half, the half that's below water, is hollow. So it makes it appear like there's so much depth, but really you've just made enough that needs to be there. And that made it a little less daunting, especially when he talked about, he wrote in one of the videos, I'll leave the first one in the description so you can kind of like go through them, but he put in one of them, he wrote out a bunch of words in physical and cultural. Like, I have the list right here. So, in physical, it was like weather, tectonic plates, the map, the flora, the fauna, races, the magic, visuals, terrain, and climate. And then for cultural, it was like religion, government, economics, borders, food, fashion, history, rites of passage, social ladders, languages, and military structure. And he said to pick one from each of those and focus on them. And he talked about how focusing on different things will kind of give your story a different feel. And so for my story, I decided to focus on the magic and the history, because in my world, 700 years in the past, there was this huge war. And this war, which I still need to go further and develop more, because I know the story of the war is going to be told a lot But this war is kind of what shaped the world that they know now. So the history is a big thing, and also the magic system. So when I first wrote this book, it was just a story about animals. It was like an animalistic fantasy adventure. But now they're humans, and there's a magic system and all these things, and it's kind of turning more into an alternate world. And so I had to come up with a magic system, and I love the magic system I came up with. I think that's my favorite thing, which I'm not super big into magic systems like the Carry On and Wayward Son. They use wands and spells and all this type of stuff, and I didn't want that. Like, I'm not interested in that type of magic. So having to find a new magic that is sort of unique but also is not hard to comprehend. I'm not big into high fantasy, so I don't want to accidentally make a high fantasy world, you know? Although my husband would love that, I would not. So I came up with these soul creatures, which are basically, these soul creatures are magic in and of itself, and everyone has a soul creature. The soul creature, or it will play a big part in this story. And that was my way of moving from it being an animalistic tale to humans, but not fully getting rid of the animals. So if everyone has a soul creature, then I can just move their animal form into their soul creature, you know? It all works. I don't know what the point of this video is, but I just want you to know that if you're in the middle of world building and you're getting overwhelmed, you are not alone. And you may feel like you need to have all these different things and all these unique things in your world, but you don't. You can take inspiration from other worlds because this is a unique world. You can have whatever you want. I've decided to have, I think, 4 or 5 different races. So you have humans, elves, gnomes, and mermaids. I have mermaids in there because I love mermaids. And I really enjoy steampunk. And even though that's in a Victorian setting, and this is sort of, this setting is in between medieval and Victorian, like it's kind of in its own setting, but I want dirigibles, which are floating ships. And so making these things, you can have whatever you want in your world and you can make it make sense, which I really enjoy. And I'm excited to diving into this world once I've finished my World Bible, because I have a feeling I'm going to be writing a lot of stories in this world, that not all of them pertain to this story that I'm trying to tell right now, but just different stories all over the continent and the world that I've made. But I do recommend making a World Bible. It doesn't have to be long. I think mine is at 4 pages right now, and the magic system and the soul creatures are fully explained. And then I've started explaining the history of the war and like what it was like before the war, during the war, and after the war. It doesn't have to be a full novel of world building. It just needs to be enough that you kind of sink your teeth into it and maybe leave some things open so you can explore things and find new exciting things about your world. Because even our world is ever evolving and changing, so it's okay if your world does. But as long as you have the core things, the things at the very center, like the things you focus on, like the physical and the cultural, as long as those things stay the same, Your world can evolve. I wanted this video to be me going into my world and you showing you this big printout of all these pages of this whole world that I've created, but that doesn't make sense because building a world doesn't happen in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it sure was destroyed in one. But we're not going to talk about that. So I'm mainly making this video for me so that if in a month I'm still world building, which I hope I'm not, but if I am, I can watch this video and I can find some empathy for myself and not get too frustrated because this is my first time doing it. And whenever someone does something for the first time, you never expect them to be fast or to get it all right and it to be perfect. So why should I expect myself to do that with world building for the first time? Especially if this world is going to be used multiple times. I need to give it my due diligence and my time and effort into doing it properly. Because you can have an amazing story idea, but if you're just using a blank, like a white screen behind your whole story, which is something I'm very guilty of, no one's gonna care. And it doesn't have to be this full, in-depth, deep world that you can like get lost in and go on all these different paths and know every little thing about it. So the empty iceberg is very much my saving grace, because if I had to build a full iceberg, I would not even try. This is overwhelming. This is a lot, and I'm doing a lot of just sitting and staring, which feels like I'm not doing a lot, but that is working on your novel. You're sitting there and staring and processing. You're still being productive, I promise. So I'm going to quit yammering and get back to finishing my world building. This is not the video I wanted to make, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. I hope I made sense. Those things will be down in the description. There will also be other things down in the description, like petitions and other resources. So please, please, please check the description. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any tips or other videos for me to watch to help with world building, please leave those in the comments. I'll appreciate anything and everything. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. No. Apparently, a world is not built in a day. Oh. Bakira. Thank you.